in the previous panel, it was explained very well the importance of the campaign against Israel, and the fact that it is. I don't remember who said. I think it was the speaker that when he spoke to the Southern Command, he said we're busy fighting the war. We don't have time to deal with the international campaign. That was a misunderstanding of the importance of the campaign. The campaign against us in the international arena is part of the military campaign. The military campaign is aimed at destroying us physically. The international campaign is aimed at destroying us legally and also helping the physical destruction by trying to prevent Israel from enabling Israel to defend itself and tie its hands. So it's a very important campaign. Now, to fight this important campaign, you need to understand this campaign's weapons, okay? How this campaign is run, and the elements that are used in this campaign. And yes, behind it, it's a political motivation, but the tools that are used are the legal tools. And if you don't understand the tools, if you don't deal with these tools in a professional way, you will lose this campaign. And the ones that understand these tools are the legal advisors. And the legal advisors, and I was a legal advisor, no, I had to be more careful. I was a legal advisor in the IDF. I was in charge of the operational legal advice of all the legal advisors, those that were sent to the commanders. And my aim was to help victory, to help win the war, okay? And when I left after 2009, after Cost led, I was accused of being a war criminal, of helping the IDF carry out war crimes. I couldn't travel abroad. And it was a small price to pay for me, because I really believed that what I was doing was to help win the war. And the legal advisors today are doing the same. So to try to argue that they in any way are trying to prevent us from winning the war, I won't say what I think about it, but I don't agree. So now how do you win this war? You have to play within the rules. It's not logical to come and say we just don't accept the rules. The rules are completely unsuitable, because then what you are saying is, if we think that the rules are not suitable, so we are not applying the rules, you are actually confessing, yes, like that you are breaking the law. So that's not a very logical position to take. Yes, when you know that you are being looked at, that they're trying to prosecute you, to prosecute our commanders, our soldiers, to prevent weapons from being sold. That's not a very good strategy. And it's also not right. It's not what we are doing, because as was also said, the laws are important also internally. You need a structure, you need a discipline. You need some kind of rules for a military to operate in a professional way. So what do? You take the rules, and Noam explained them. The rules of the armed conflict, there are 3 rules, 3 major principles, and they're very simple, okay? The distinction. You can attack a military target or combatants. You can't directly attack civilians. Then there's the question is who's who, okay? The second one, yes, is that when you do attack this military objective, that a civilian object, like Daphne explained, that is used for military purposes, yes, it becomes a military objective. A person that is either a member of the forces, and the forces include the forces of a terror organization, I'll come to that, or directly participating in the hostilities, or even if you suspect that, okay, and he acts or she in a suspicious way, yes, they become a legitimate target. But even when you attack them, the second principle, okay, you have to do it, you have to take into account proportionality. Okay, if you're attacking this target and civilians might be killed, it will be proportionate. It won't be an excessive harm. You have to weigh the military advantage from the attack and the expected collateral harm to civilians from the attack, and only if the collateral harm is excessive, then you're not allowed to attack, which means that the military advantage gets more weight, because only if it's excessive, the civilian harm, then you can't attack. If it's even equal, you can attack, okay? How do you apply it? Yet it's not easy to apply, but the rule itself is not so complicated. And then you have the third one of precautions. When you do all this, you try to take precautions, feasible precautions, to minimize harm to civilians. Only feasible. If they are not feasible, you don't have to take them. If you are carrying out an attack and a surprise is important, you don't have to warn in advance, because that's not a feasible precaution. And even if civilians might get killed, But if you can, if you're attacking a building, and you don't need to attack it when the civilians are there, so you can give a warning, they can leave the building, and you can attack this object and minimize harm to civilians. And that's a feasible precaution. Okay, so once we have all this, then it becomes the issue of interpretation. And here, how do you influence? You said, Maurice, about winning the discussion. Winning the discussion is to be part of the discussion, okay? Being part of the discussion is exactly what we are trying to do. So when I was a member of the direct participation in hostilities, this DPH ICRC workshop, which was, there were 5 sessions or 4 sessions. I wasn't there in the first one, I joined the other 3. And in the first session, when I joined, the world was divided into 2. There were civilians and combatants, and all the terrorists were civilians. Mm-hmm. And because we came after we already did this a lot in the alliance, I came and I told, how did I tell? I went to the Americans, I went to the British, I went to the Canadians, to all my friends, to the Australians, to the legal advisors that were from the militaries, that thought like me, that this is not illogical, but they didn't understand. And I said, look, this is not logical. When you are fighting against a terror organization, a non-state, an organized armed group, and that's your enemy, it's not logical that all its members, its armed forces, that are the equivalent of the soldiers of an army that I'm fighting. If I was fighting the Syrian army, then 8 soldiers would be combatants. I could kill them in bed, I could kill them, never mind what they are doing at that moment. It's not logical that if I'm fighting the Hezbollah, just my example then suddenly all the armed forces, all civilians, and I have to wait until they do something, so direct participation in hostilities, and then only I can kill them. That's not logical. And they said, you're right. And then we managed to persuade the group to add this idea, which Maurice put it as if it was a limitation. It was actually going forward, saying in these kinds of conflicts, when your enemy is an organized armed group, all the members of its armed forces, the equivalent to the members of an army, the soldiers, are all legitimate targets, are all become, and they don't have to be at that moment participating in hostilities to be a legitimate target. Now, yes, and then there was a discussion of what is direct participation in hostilities of other civilians, a whole long discussion, and yes, in the end, the ICRC, while it went our way, put a very limited interpretation into both these concepts. Who exactly is considered the member of the armed forces of the organized armed group, and what exactly is considered direct participation in hostilities for civilians.
One more minute.
So, yes, so we didn't accept it. So the US and UK and others, and Australia, Canada, and Israel, we all published our positions saying this is much too constrained. So now when you look at the law, what does the law say? The law is not according to what the ICRC put in the DPH, because major militaries, major countries that have active hostilities didn't accept it. And as Noam said, the law develops through practice. So now, this doesn't prevent, of course, the bodies like the UN and human rights organizations that either are hostile to Israel or live in some la-la land, to say that everything is not lawful and to take very extreme positions. These extreme positions are, of course, unfair. Sometimes it's out of hostility, sometimes it's out of just misunderstanding completely what is a war. And these we have to show that they are. We have to, of course, oppose them. But not to go against the whole concept of the laws of armed conflict itself. And just a last moment. So I think, and to do this, so I say the legal advisors play a vital part. And I'm sorry, maybe Pete had us heard a very bad example, by the way. At one stage, yes, Obama, for example, at his time, there was a zero casualty policy, zero civilian casualty policy. And I remember I spoke to somebody who came from Iraq, and he said, we couldn't, even when we saw the enemy, we couldn't engage because they might be a civilian. That's crazy, but that was a policy, that's not the law. The law allows it, and the legal advisors help us win this war in this international campaign. They are very important there. It would be a big mistake to take them out. And another thing that will help us in this campaign, and I will say it, and I know, and I will end with that, and I'm sure it will be controversial, is the investigations. The investigations are important. The investigations are important, first of all, if somebody did really something very bad, I think, yes, they should be even prosecuted. We don't have to defend everybody in every price. But more than that, in most cases, I believe our soldiers are not carrying out war crimes, okay? The investigations are more important in order to give a good answer of complementarity. Yes, thank you. Also in the ICC, in the International Criminal Court, which I don't believe in much, but still it could be a hook if they want to get off this tree that they climbed on because of sanctions, for example. And also in the courts around the world, where our soldiers are being chased. Believe me, most of the judges and the prosecutors in these countries don't want these cases. They don't need them. All they need is a good excuse that they can say, oh, it's been investigated, and they close the case. So it's for their sake we needed these investigations, and again, to portray them as if, you know, the bad military legal advisors are chasing our poor soldiers, it's really distorting the truth.